Tonight, the one thing President Obama should have mentioned in his big speech on the economy, but didn't. And $50 trillion. Why is the government hiding the real size of our national debt? Welcome to the Willis Report. Hello, everybody. I'm Jerry Willis. Today was the day that showed us how this economic debate will play out in the election as President Obama and Mitt Romney offered what they would do to grow the economy in battleground Ohio. All this as new economic data show just how stuck our economy really is, causing the Dow to soar up triple digits as speculation is building. The Federal Reserve has no choice but to step in with stimulus. With us now, Dan Mitchell, a senior fellow of the Cato Institute, Hadley Heath, a senior policy analyst for the Independent Women's Forum, and Wayne Kaufman, chief market analyst for John Thomas Financial. Hadley, I want to start with you. So tell me, who lived up to expectations today and who didn't?
Well, over past weeks, polling has indicated that more Americans trust Romney than Obama in terms of economic policy, direction of the economy. But you got to remember, don't give these speeches and have these national debates. Buckle up, because we've got another 4.5 months of this, and I think President Obama is really going to be able to connect with a lot of voters in spite of the fact that his record on the economy isn't something to brag about.
Dan, was there a clear winner?
I think they fought to a draw. I thought the most interesting political news was that poll showing that 2/3 of voters still blamed Bush, even though more than half of them also blamed Obama. So as we get closer to November, especially if the economy's weak, it's going to be a big-time blame game.
Wayne, what economic policies does Wall Street want to hear?
Well, Wall Street, for the sake of the stock market, Wall Street would love to see more stimulus, because that money works its way into the market. Doesn't necessarily help the economy. Unfortunately, Bernanke, he himself was pleading with Congress, to me it was pleading, to do something because the Fed can only do so much. He said that they're seeing diminishing returns from what they're doing. And low interest rates aren't the problem. So lowering interest rates, just what is that going to do at this point?
Well, let me tell you, Romney had lots of ideas what the problems were. Here's Romney today.
Did the president's policies make things better or worse for getting jobs? Let's just go through them one by one. That stimulus didn't work. That stimulus didn't put more private sector people to work. How about Obamacare? The president said the other day that he didn't know that Obamacare was hard for small business. Oh, really?
Dan, agree or disagree?
I think he's making some very good points because Obama's stimulus, which is really just more government spending, diverted resources from the productive sector of the economy. And there's no question that Obamacare, especially with all the taxes to finance it, is going to be an additional burden on the private sector of the economy. We should have actually learned from the Bush years that making government bigger doesn't work. And Obama, instead of changing things, he sort of doubled down on all the statism and the intervention and the regulation and the spending. And I think we're suffering as a result. We're making America more like Europe.
Hadley, your opinion?
Well, every time I talk to people in the business community, it doesn't matter if they have a large firm or a small firm, they mention 3 things on their wish list for making job creation easier. They say we need regulatory reform, we need tax reform, and we need to get rid of Obamacare. So those are the things that job creators say are really holding them back, because those things are raising the cost of employment. They're making it harder for people to understand how to comply with the many rules and regulations. So if we really want to move ahead with job creation and have a real boost for our economy, we have to look at those things.
Wayne, does Hadley have it right?
I think that most people can't really discuss these issues. More, I don't want to use the phrase more intelligent. Certain informed people know the issues, but I think everybody knows that Obama is for big government and control of the economy. And Romney is a nuts and bolts guy financially, and he digs into things and fixes them. I think everybody knows that. The problem is people respond to how much pain they are in, and as they have more and more pain economically, that's when Romney has a better chance, and that's why I think he's going to win. But I don't think the average person really can discuss these issues.
Well, I think the average person can discuss these issues, and I discuss them every day, but...
You're not the average. You're far from the average person.
Well, you may think that, but I don't see it that way. Dan, let me go to you. Economic proposals. It's interesting to me how many people disapprove of both candidates. Disapproval rating for Romney on his economic proposals, 47%, Obama, 54%. What do you say?
I think there's a lot of disenchantment by the American people because this entire century they've had politicians increasing the burden of government, and so yes, it's understandable. They don't trust anybody who is either in Washington or is running to go to Washington. So the big challenge for Romney will be, if he wins, will he fulfill his promise to bring the burden of federal spending down from 25% of GDP to 20% of GDP? If he does that, I think he would be rewarded if he ran for a second term, much as Reagan was rewarded for making the hard choices to control spending last century.
Hadley, could Romney be successful at that?
I think it's very important, as Dan mentioned, that Romney stay away from these Washington, D.C.-based solutions. It's very easy in Washington. I think a lot of policymakers on both sides of the aisle get the idea, it's a little arrogant, that they know how to run something better than 300 million Americans know how to run something. And when it comes to economic policy, that's certainly the case. You know, central planning has been proven to fail over and over again. So if Romney can make the case that he believes in American individuals and their contributions, and all he wants to do is simply scale back the role of government into their lives, then I think that's really the winning message.
All right, winning messages, that's what we're looking for tonight. Dan, Hadley, and Wayne, stick around. We'll have much more analysis on the day's news next, and still to come as we await a judgment from the Supreme Court. A new report shows just how much Obamacare is hurting doctors, and you will have details. Stay with us.
Legal system under fire. First, caught on tape. How insurance fraud cases. Don't miss a minute.
Time to get back to our panel. With me tonight, Dan Mitchell of the Cato Institute, Hadley Heath of the Independent Women's Forum, and Wayne Kaufman from John Thomas Financial. I want to start with a quote from the president on his campaign trail today. Here's what he had to say.
We were told that huge tax cuts, especially for the wealthiest Americans, would lead to faster job growth. We were told that fewer regulations, especially for big financial institutions and corporations, would bring about widespread prosperity. But the growth that took place during this time period turned out to be a house of cards. And in the fall of 2008, it all came tumbling down with a financial crisis that plunged the world into the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression.
Wayne, to you, is this economy the fault of George Bush?
I think President Bush had a hand in this. There's no doubt he was a big spender. People make excuses for why he was a big spender, but he definitely was. But, you know, this is a situation where, when I said before, most people don't understand these issues. I've discussed this with many clients who come in to our firm, and a lot of people say, oh, this was Bush's fault. I ask them a simple question. Are you familiar with the Community Reinvestment Act? None of them have heard. I won't say none. Most of them have not even heard of it. So whether you agree that the housing bubble was caused by that, partly caused by that or not, the inability to discuss it means you're not really informed. So yes, I do think that Mr. Bush played a part in this, but President Obama has certainly made it far worse. And when he talks about projections or what people said would happen, all you have to do is look at his record, the things he promised 3.5 years ago. None of those have happened. He had 2 years where he had the whole Congress doing what he wanted, and everything is much worse than what he promised. And in the real world, you'd be fired for that type of performance.
Dan, your opinion.
If you look at Bush's fiscal record, he doubled the size of the federal government from $1.8 to $3.6 trillion in just 8 years. I don't blame the tax cuts at all. As a matter of fact, before the financial crisis hit, tax revenues were at their long-term historical average. So that's clearly not where the problem was. And we didn't have a single bit of deregulation during the Bush years. As a matter of fact, we had things like the Sarbanes-Oxley regulation that drove a lot of business to foreign countries. So when I complain about Obama, I complain about the very same things that we had under Bush. More spending, more regulation, more intervention, more red tape. They were both for bailouts, both for bigger government. That's That's our problem. We're becoming Europe.
We're becoming Europe. Well, Hadley, to you, I want you to comment on something President Bill Clinton had to say, well, 2 years ago. In an economic flashback, the Democrats are saying something like this: we found a big hole that we did not dig. We didn't get it filled in 21 months, but at least we quit digging. Give us 2 more years. If it doesn't work, vote us out. What do you say?
Wow, that's pretty strong words there. I think that's pretty clear what President Clinton is suggesting. But at this point, look, we're not getting ourselves out of a hole. We haven't even stopped digging. In terms of the federal debt, we are continuously digging, and we have tons of unfunded liabilities in a lot of these entitlement programs that need serious reform. So again, it's not the personal fault of George W. Bush or Barack Obama, but it is these policies that both of them have tended to embrace when they continuously spend more money than we have. And I totally second what Dan says about the tax cuts. It isn't about a tax problem, it's about a spending problem. And when government continues to overregulate and overspend, they're making us all poorer, and they're choking out the private sector.
Dan, to you, lots of conversation about whether Barack Obama was able to offer new ideas. Did you see any today?
I didn't see any new ideas. He still wants the class warfare tax policy, but you don't get more growth by punishing people who save and invest. He wants more government spending. He calls it stimulus, but it didn't work for Hoover and Roosevelt in the 30s. It didn't work for Japan in the 90s. It didn't work for Bush in 2008, and it's not working for him today. So unless he is willing to become a Clinton Democrat, I'm not even asking for him to become Reagan, but become a Clinton Democrat, reduce the burden of government spending, be willing to deregulate, be willing to reduce the burden of government on the productive sector of the economy. I think he's incapable of doing that because he's had zero experience with the private sector in his life.
Zero experience. Wayne, to you, foreclosures up 16% in a report today. Of course, we see that Greece is going to vote this weekend on whether it'll stay in the EU or not. Tell us your expectations of the economy here and what it will mean for the election.
Well, in terms of Greece, you know, the polls in Greece show that most people there want to stay in the Eurozone. So, you know, that would be a short-term nice outcome, especially for the market. Relative to the economy is very stagnant. The last payrolls report was a disaster. They showed that we gained 135,000 or something jobs. That was a mirage. It was really, I'm sorry, it was supposed to be that. It was only about 69,000. But there's something called the birth-death adjustment. That's a government estimate of how many new businesses were created, and that was 204,000. If you take that away, we may have actually had a net loss, and that number peaks in April and May.
Wow.
So the next month or two could be very bad.
Well, guys, thanks so much for coming on tonight. Dan, Hadley, and Wayne, appreciate your help. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
The controversial Consumer Financial Protection Bureau making headlines today. The federal agency is again making an enemy out of the banking industry. The CFPB has a plan to let consumers, that is, vent about their credit cards online in a public forum. A new website set to launch this summer would allow consumers to search by company to see what kinds of complaints others have had. The agency is doing this despite the fact that there are literally hundreds of forums online where customers can go to complain. The American Bankers Association and others say it's not fair to let people post complaints without anyone seeing first if they're valid. But now this agency may need a complaint box of its own. A new report by USA Today shows only about a third of credit card consumers who have gone to the CFPB for help have gotten some. Got a complaint about your mortgage? The payouts are even worse. Only 11% got any money back, and nearly 40% are unhappy with the agency because government is never the answer. More bureaucratic red tape will not be able to help you get through bureaucratic red tape. If you're fired up about this or anything we talk about in the show, be sure to send us an email to jerry@foxbusiness.com.
Coming up on the Willis Report, President Obama put off the Keystone Project. Now Canada is plugging ahead to build their own oil pipelines. Talk about unintended consequences. Jerry breaks it all down next. Is the nation's debt crisis bigger than we thought? According to a new government study, it is. Our guest explains why Americans should prepare for the worst. President Obama's star-studded fundraisers for his re-election are stirring up much debate. Our own Lou Dobbs tells us what he really thinks about our celebrity-in-chief. We're on the case, next on the Willis Report.